We're here at the Wrestling Universe with one of my favorite guests today here on the official Attitude Era podcast. We've got a man of many names. Introduce yourself. What name do you have?
My name is Mr. Kennedy.
That was...
Or Anderson. Or, as my wife calls me, asshole. That works.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Legendary, man.
A definite legend and being on the show. Let's get right into it because I know we have limited time. You're part of the Ruthless Aggression Era, which followed the Attitude Era, which is what we're called, the Attitude Era podcast. To you, what was the effects of the Attitude Era, and was that what you were watching? Like, this is what I'm trying to kind of mirror when I go in.
Oh yeah. To this day, I feel like wrestling. Personally, I feel like wrestling needs to go back to that. I like the adult, sort of edgy, not just salacious for the sake of being salacious, but like, adult humor. And I feel like everybody does and that goes for like independent groups too. Everybody goes for the family friendly stuff.
Yeah.
AEW is a little more, a little edgier, but
Right.
I like to swear personally. I don't want to, I don't want to swear just because. I don't want everybody to bleed just because, but
Right.
I think if there's a good use for it,
Yeah.
you should use it.
Agree. And that's something Bevon said. We just had him on. He said he thinks the world is too soft for what the product used to be.
Yeah.
Do you feel like wrestling has lost its identity due to trying to be more family friendlier now?
I do.
Coming from the Ruthless Aggression, I feel like everybody had their own signature tone in what they did, especially with what you were doing. Do you feel like with trying to meet the needs for a younger demographic that you lose the identity of what wrestling was at that time?
Yes. Well, not only just meeting the needs of that younger audience, but also once it's a publicly traded company, you are beholden to the shareholders and stuff too. So if they don't like something, you heard how many times did we hear about WWE getting, one of their major investors or sponsors coming in and saying like, hey, we didn't like what you did last night. Don't ever do that again, or apologize for it. I just don't think as artists, and that's what we are ultimately, you should have to apologize for doing your art,
Right.
I've always sort of wondered why wrestling, any other form of entertainment or art, you can go edgy.
Yeah.
And it's not just for the sake of like being edgy, it's telling a story, like the villain gets his in the end, but the build up to that is, like Mr. McMahon making Trish Stratus take her blouse off, whatever, right? Like,
Right.
On its face, it seems ridiculous, but then if you watch the whole thing play out, he eventually gets his ass handed to him a little bit.
Absolutely.
I just sort of wish that we would be able to do that a little more. I don't know why wrestling can't go there, because if wrestling goes there, it's like too out of bounds.
It's fair.
Well, let me ask you this because that's a great question. Before we get into the nitty gritty, have you heard about the whole WWE sale thing going on, being sold? And what do you think of that? Do you think that's bad for the company, a good thing for wrestling?
You know what? I think it's too early to tell. How many times has something occurred and everybody either immediately goes all in? That's fucking bad. Oh, can I swear on here?
Oh, absolutely. Attitude Era.
You can do terrible.
You can
It'll never work. That's the worst thing I've ever heard.
Absolutely.
Or that's awesome, and I think we gotta wait and just see. It's not even confirmed yet, right? Like
No, nothing.
Nothing's been
It could
confirmed.
be
It's
just
all up in the air.
yeah.
All speculation.
Everybody's getting all their panties up in a bunch,
Yeah.
and then suddenly, it's sold to somebody else.
Yeah.
Ted Turner comes back into the fold. That'd be
Oh man, that would be. I kind of like
plot
that.
twist.
I kind of like that.
Ultimate plot twist.
Well, I'm glad things got a little Attitude Era with that answer because actually we pointed out before you were in the Ruthless Aggression Era, and something I get made fun of on this podcast is I was a Ruthless Aggression baby, not an Attitude Era baby. And
It's just a different time. It's just a different. I'm Attitude Era, but love what the Ruthless Aggression definitely brought.
People
to WWE.
sleep on the Ruthless Aggression.
I definitely wish that I could have been in the Attitude Era. That was the stories that those guys told. Remember Taker and those guys telling me like it was rock star status. during those days, you know.
Especially with what you provided with your gimmick, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's definitely something new and refreshing in the Attitude Era, or the Ruthless Aggression era. Do you feel like there would be any feuds, as the fan in you, do you think there were any Attitude Era matchups you would love to have, or any feuds you would love to have?
Austin was like, Austin was it for me, man. Like, I wasn't a wrestling fan growing up,
Right.
but when I started watching specifically because my friend said, you gotta watch this guy.
Yeah.
And I did, and I was like, that's fucking cool. I'll watch every week just to see what he did. And then I was like, you know, after a couple of weeks, like, oh, Undertaker's kind of cool too. And Kane, and pretty soon The Rock started doing his thing. And, you know, pretty soon I loved everybody, and that's all I talked about. I was 21 years old at the time. That's all I talked about was wrestling. That's all I thought about. It was weird. I realized, like, I had been missing out on all this for all these years.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you brought up Austin, because I think I was actually watching an interview with him, and he brought up something that you did. You used to do this thing when wrestling, how people get chops in the corner, but I think you used to actually raise your hands a little to kind of block it. And it's something. Is that something you did intentionally, or just kind of became a thing in the ring?
No. So, what did he say about it? Was it?
I think he said that he wanted some people might not like that, like you doing that.
So, when I remember when I was trying to break into the WWE, after I had broken into the business, I was doing independence. I would, you know, a couple times a year, I would go and be extra for WWE.
Oh.
And I remember Val Venus, you know, a bunch of us were in the ring just working out, and somebody came up and like punched me in the face, and I was like here on the ropes, and he kicked me in the stomach and punched me in the face again. And he came up to me, he's like, you know, little things like, if you're in a real fight, you're gonna try to like put your hands up, right? Like, you get hit, but you don't necessarily have to block it, but just to make it look like you're going that route.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought about that. And actually, there was a period of time where Vince was telling guys, like, stop fucking standing there in the corner. You know, it should look like you're trying to block. And I remember working with Taker, and you know, he would do something like, he would kick me. I remember grabbing onto the ropes one time, and he grabbed my legs to pull me away, and instead of just letting him go, I fucking held on to it, which caused him to have to stomp me in the guts. And then I let go of it, and he pulled me. And I remember he pulled me aside after, and he was like, keep doing that stuff because it sets you apart. It's different. I like it. But just know that there will be some people who don't like it, who think that you're just being difficult to work with, and you know, you're covering up, whatever. I'm not covering up. It's simulated combat.
Yeah.
And I want to try to make this look as, everybody knows it's a work. Everybody knows it's, you know, we're not really fighting each other. I think the art comes in hiding the wires, right? It's good CGI.
Right.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
And speaking of that, and just kind of...
Oh, I'm sorry, but there were some people that didn't like that.
And that's what I was going to get to.
Yeah.
Speaking of that and people not liking things and just these backstage politics, you know, especially as fans, sometimes you hear rumors of backstage heat or beef or something, and you're someone who, even me as a fan, was always in a high slotted position. You were the next star. And there were all these rumors about like backstage heat. Like, we can get into specifics, like people like Randy Orton, John Cena. How do those backstage politics play into Mr. Kennedy's career?
I'll say this. It would be easy for me, and for a really long time, I had a chip on my shoulder. Getting fired from your dream job sucks, right? And getting fired publicly where everybody's then reporting on it and speculating and stuff like that, it sucks. And for a long time, I sort of blamed other people, I think. And at the end of the day, I put myself in a position where those people, you know, and I'm not even saying like anybody did, but had I not been an asshole and had I done my job exactly the way that I should have done my job, entirely 100% all the time, those guys, you know, speaking ill of me to the boss, wouldn't have done anything.
Wow.
So I blame myself.
Do you feel like because we have a long history between WWE to your TNA run, do you think just overall as a wrestler, as a professional in this art, there were any things that if you had the chance to, would you do anything different, or do you think things played out to the benefit of who you are today?
No, definitely. I definitely have regrets. I don't dwell on them. I don't I don't sit and cry about it. But I think that's healthy.
That's fair. Yeah, absolutely.
I guess realizing where I made my missteps, and hey, life isn't over. What can I do to move past it?
Absolutely.
But yeah, there's definitely some stuff. We were talking about it today. The speaking out about things that, I don't know, for some reason at some point I thought the world needs to know what Ken Kennedy thinks about this particular topic. So.
Absolutely, it's fair. As humans, we have things that we deal with, and obviously if we could, we would take things back, but I think in the grand scheme of it, you left a very important imprint in a lot of people's childhoods of wrestling moving forward, especially with the charisma that you presented in the ring, multiple titles, and Mr. Money in the Bank himself, you know what I mean? Just curious to know about that, definitely. So we appreciate your honesty and your transparency in that.
Absolutely. And last question, touching on Money in the Bank. You were actually the person, Mr. Money in the Bank. You won it, and this is a bit of a deeper question. It was taken away because of injury, and it later kind of turned out to be a misdiagnosis. So, I mean, you see these wrestlers who will get put out and then 10 years later coming back because of these. How do you feel about that? Just the WWE, the diagnosis medics in wrestling.
Well, it wasn't the WWE. It was whatever. I went to, I think it was Erie, Pennsylvania, where I had my my MRI. So they gave me. I was the Money in the Bank winner. I had the briefcase with me, which means you're entitled to a match of your choosing with any champion, right? Within 365 days, right? And I remember I left SmackDown. I was riding with Matt Hardy. I get a phone call from Michael Hayes. Where are you? We're 10 minutes down the road. Come back. Vince needs to talk to you in his office. So I come back, and I remember walking down the hallway, and Batista was coming out of Vince's office, and he just came up to me and he gave me a big hug.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then he's like, "Congratulations, man, you deserve it." And I was like, "What do you mean?" and he's like, "Let them tell you." So I walk in the office, and it was Stephanie and Vince. And Vince just said, "Look, Taker's hurt. We were gonna have Taker keep the championship for a long time, and he's injured, and we need to get it off of him. So next week, we tape SmackDown on Tuesdays, Tuesday night. We're going to do something where, he has a cage match with Mark Henry, barely survives, and then you're going to come out and finish the job, and we're going to have a new champion." And then I went home. I had a couple days off, and then the very next time I worked, we were in Poughkeepsie. We were in Poughkeepsie doing a double shot. And the first show, I was in the ring. It was like a 6-man tag, and Batista pulled me in for a clothesline, just a little short clothesline. And I felt something pop in my triceps. Rolled out to the floor. Finley was out there. He looked at me. He goes, "That's not good." And by the time I got downstairs, it was already turning colors, which is crazy because bruises take a while. And then so I remember that night, Hornswoggle drove me to the ER. I got X-rays and I got an MRI, and then just went to the hotel room and just waited to get the results. Stephanie called me the next day and she's like, "Ken, you're going to be out for 7 or 8 months because you tore your triceps off the bone, and unfortunately we still need to get that title off of you because Taker, we need to get it off of Taker. So Vince's jet is coming to pick you up, and you're going to fly to Penn State, and Edge is going to challenge you for the briefcase tonight. He's going to do what you were supposed to do."
Wow.
So I was just like, "Hey, this is life. Business is business." So I didn't put up a fuss. I didn't argue about it. I just went and did it. Edge called me a chicken. I said, "Nobody calls me a chicken." Did the thing, and then the next day I went down to Birmingham and met with Dr. James Andrews. And I remember sitting on this table, and he was like, he started doing this, and he was like, "So you You tore your triceps, huh? No, I don't think so. That's not a tear. And I was like, excuse me?
Why?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not a tear. I don't feel a tear in there. He goes, I can't find your MRI anywhere, so we're gonna have you do another one. I did it, and sure enough, like it was just a large bruise, a bunch of blood vessels that popped in there. So he goes, you'll probably be out maybe a month and a half. And then you're good to go.
Man. Oh my God.
It is what it is, though, you know. Like,
Right.
So.
Well, it's cool to get context behind these stories, and thank you so much for coming on the pod and giving some context and being honest and sharing these stories.
Anytime.
And that's the Attitude Era podcast. Truly one of my favorite guests. Thank you, man.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Yep. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was